Well, hello everybody. This is Ken Himmler and welcome to another broadcast of the Wiser Money Show. Today, wow, August 5th. Holy mackerel. 4 months left till we close out 2022. What a wild and willy year we've had so far. Hey, I am going to do a little different show today. I'm actually going to cut it a little short because everything that I covered last week, inflation has not changed much. There's been no vote on Secure Act 2.0. The November midterms aren't close enough to make any kind of changes within our process or strategies. Nothing really has changed within the market. I mean, you read, well, July was the best bull market since 2020, bull market month. Of course it has been, because when you drop 20% the 3 months prior, when you increase by 10, it looks good, but we're still 8 to 9% off from where the highs are. I still don't make it. I'm not making any changes within allocations. So, there's not a lot to cover today, but I do want to cover two things with you. And one of those is asset protection. The second one is our EconMap version 9. I kind of want to show you and delve into that a little bit deeper so you can see what I see coming. And I might be coming out with a version 9.1 because of the debt ratio. But let me start with just talking about asset protection for a minute. So we have just reviewed a couple umbrella policies by clients that brought them in. Again, we're not listed as the agents. So when somebody creates an e-money account and they upload their umbrella insurance, we don't see it. It's there really as the client in a depository. We'll record what the premiums are, but we don't really review the policy itself. I just reviewed two policies, one from Allstate and one from Hudson. Almost forgot the name there for a second. And in both cases, what people buy an umbrella policy for is to make sure that if their limits don't cover them on their basic homeowners and or their basic automobile, that they have some extended coverages. Now, we reviewed one that had about $2 million in coverage, and this person is paying about $540 a year for that coverage. And the reason that they bought it is to extend past their homeowner's policy. However, in both cases, there was let's say maybe 3-liner in the contract. And while most people don't understand, or they maybe have too much trust in an insurance company, I probably have a very different opinion on this only because of experience. And it's not just one experience, but my experience actually started back in the 80s when I owned rental properties in New York, and I had somebody sue me for almost $3 million. Not almost, it was actually $3 million back in the 80s. And here's what the lawsuit stated. And let me tell you, the way that lawsuit was delivered to me was quite a shocker. I'm sitting there at 11:30 at night. I get a knock on the door and there's a policeman there. So your first thing is either they're there to tell you that a relative died or somebody was trying to break into your car or something bad like that. Well, I answered the door and he said, "Are you Mr. Himmler?" "Yes." "You've been served." This is a county sheriff. And he hands me a lawsuit. And I read the lawsuit. I didn't even know that this event had happened. And keep in mind, if you read any of the stuff that I've written, I had a couple houses burned down. One person, my houses, because I owned multiple pieces of real estate. One was an arson where they sent the person to jail. One was just all kinds of things that happened. And I thought, this can't be anything to do with this, because all that stuff had been in the past. Well, here's what happened. Apparently, some lady was walking down the sidewalk. She apparently fell and hit her head, and she couldn't go to work, and she had all these other kind of side effects. And this was because I failed to keep the sidewalk clear of snow and ice. So I go to my insurance company and they do what I call contract out. Basically what it was some guy said, well, turn to page 49 Look at subsection 13. Of course, it's written in size 4 font. You can barely read it. And it says, we will only cover you if you have taken the responsibility of keeping your properties safe from any kind of hazard and or debris that may cause an accident. I said, you gotta be kidding me. Well, this was snow and ice. So the agent, or not the agent, but the company representative said, yeah, we can't cover you for that. Why not? Well, you didn't clear the ice. I said, so let me get this straight. I hire a service. They come out at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they come back again at 4 or 5. They shovel, they ice, everything. And because she said that she fell at 11 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to cover me? Yeah, that's right. So what do you want me to do? You want me to have somebody there 24/7? And the guy says, read your contract. You are responsible for keeping all debris and hazard clear. So, of course, that's a scary moment. Now you know you don't even have the insurance companies backing because they use some subsection that they can claim. It's kind of gray area, but they can claim they're not going to cover you for it. And so I had to go get a lawyer. I had to sue them, which back then I think it was like $22,000, $23,000, something really obnoxious. And of course I couldn't recover that money, but as soon as I sued them, then they said, okay, if you drop your lawsuit, we'll represent you, but we can't guarantee that you're going to pay, we'll pay a claim. So here's the sad part about it. This went on for months, and of course you're on pins and needles, stressed out. They settle with this lady for $6,000. It was just a slip and fall. I mean, Walmart and Target, and they go through this stuff all the time. People fake falls, right? And they just pay them off. Well, as an individual, not being Walmart or Target, it gets pretty stressful. So, getting back to my story, and let me tell you, I did a class once, and some guy argues with me, and my insurance company, I've been with them for 30 years. They would never do that to me. I said, man, then you are living in la la land. It is all mathematics. I said, they're going to look at how much premium you're going to pay and what they could jack your premiums to. How long will you live? Can they recover the money? It's a business. An insurance company is a business. And you don't trust them without reservation. And you make sure that you cover your bases. And this is why I tell people when they buy disability insurance, get it from a couple different companies. If somebody says, go get $10,000 a month in disability insurance, don't buy it from one company. There's been countless instances over the years. Provident Life and Accident is a great example. That's a disability company that's out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they have sold since to Unum, UNUM. But years ago, they were caught. What do you call those guys? Settlement agents? No, assessors, appraisers. Can't think of the name of the guys, but they go out, they assess a claim. And they were getting bonuses for denying claims. So the people that were getting the least amount of claims, so what they do? Well, they'd come out and say, yeah, I don't think you're disabled. And then you'd have to sue the company while you're disabled to get your claim. And then you got to front the money for that. Maybe you don't have the money, so you just give up on it. And so they were caught doing this, and there was actually communications. It was just a bad culture. And this is why I tell people you get disability insurance, get it from 2 or 3 different companies. We tell our physician clients, get it from the AMA or the Dental Association, get a part from there, get part from private, so you're not depending upon one single carrier. Right now I have 3 disability policies, all split up between 3 different companies, because I don't trust that every company is going to have the right culture at the time that I might have an accident, if I have an accident. So it's the same thing with fire, automobile, and I can't tell you how many times in almost 40 years of doing this, where probably 2 to 3 times a year somebody will bring me a case and they'll go, this is what happened. And usually there's not a lot you can do about it other than mitigating the risk at the beginning. Now here's the sad part. You go out and you buy umbrella insurance to mitigate your risk. But are you sure it's going to cover it? Because here's what happens a lot of times. We'll go to somebody that has a rental property. And we'll explain to them that they should have that rental property inside of an LLC. And you know what they do? Well, how much does that cost? And how much is that going to cost me per year? I'm not paying that. I have an umbrella policy. We try to explain, listen, and if you have a castle, the first thing you do, you build a wall. Second thing you do, you build a moat. The third thing that you do is you put armed guards at the top of the wall. Why? It's a 3-step protection procedure. You don't just put a wall up. Why? Well, somebody's just going to come bang the door down. It's no different in any asset protection. So you don't just get along with just an umbrella, because if your insurance company goes bankrupt or refuses to pay, let's go back to 2002, 2004, Florida. Half of the insurance companies went bankrupt when Hurricane Andrew came through. And most people only had the state's limit of $250,000 to cover their house. So again, it may not even be that the insurance company denies your claim. They may not have the type of money to pay out. So Allstate has done that. Unum has done it with disability insurance. I mean, I can go on and on and on, right? A lot of the times it also happens to be what that culture is. You know, General Electric Insurance Company, the CEO was caught taking the company's 747 on multi-million-dollar golf excursions. It was also found out in that year that that same CEO and that insurance company denied a lot of claims. So again, there's so many things that can go wrong with just hanging your hat on my asset protection is based upon my umbrella policy. So let me get to the story about this umbrella policy review. So these two companies had the exclusion, but it was written in a very nebulous way. Nebulous is not probably the right. Gray area, could be debated or litigated and dragged out to the point where the person losing money may not have the money to fight it with a lawyer. So it said, the exclusion to this policy shall be any person entering or on your property that is on the property being employed. So I thought about this, and so I called the agent for this company that had both these policies. And I said, let me just make sure I understand this. If this client has a nanny come in the house, this client has a cleaning company come in the house, and let's say that they get hurt, is my client covered? The answer was no. I said, okay, that's what I thought. And why not? Here's what the insurance agent said. Every person that enters your property needs to have a business license and their own liability coverage. We will not cover them. I said, yeah, that's exactly what I thought, and I'll tell you a story in a minute. And I said, okay, so you're telling me that my client's going to go buy this umbrella policy, and every house cleaner, every handyman, every lawn care worker that comes on the property, everybody that even delivers DoorDash, right? They're going to have to show proof of insurance. I said, come on, this is ridiculous. And this is exactly what I talk about. Do not hang your hat on umbrella insurance as your only line of defense with asset protection, because it's very easy for somebody to slip and fall or claim something. So I'll give you the actual story. In the Vegas office, we had a client that came in. Now, as you know, in certain states, each state will provide a certain limit of asset protection on their home. Well, in this particular case, a lawn care worker came on their property. He cut the back of his foot off with his mower. Well, wouldn't you know it, his boss, the owner of the company, was short on money and did not renew the workers' comp or liability. So who do you think that the lawn care worker sued? It was the homeowner, and they won. And unfortunately, there's a claim on that house now where the equity of that house above the $600,000 now belongs to this lawn care worker. So my point is this. If you think that your umbrella insurance is your be-all, end-all to making sure you have coverage, I would suggest you get that reviewed. And this insurance agent that I'm speaking of, again, doesn't think of asset protection, because the response of, well, we're not going to cover that because any person entering your house should have their own liability insurance. Well, come on. Seriously, are you going to ask the handyman before you show up, bring your business license and bring proof of insurance? No, that's not how it works. Even if you had a home warranty, those people are subcontractors. They don't work for the home warranty company. If you read the home warranty, it says they're subcontractors. Are you going to ask for their proof of insurance every time? So my point is this. Be very careful with how you are protecting your assets. All right, let's move on to EconMap version 9. I just felt like I had to share that because the response that I got from the insurance agent was, I don't know, weak. It didn't really address reality, and it only excluded the company from covering a liability, which, by the way, that's a pretty high liability. While I would admit that an automobile accident has a higher statistical average of happening, if you do have that on-property liability, you're not covered. Now, here's I know I was going to get off this point, but if you have people over for dinner, they're not there to work and they hurt themselves, well, now you're covered. But I don't know, maybe if I look at my life, for the once a month we have somebody over for dinner versus every week somebody's either handyman or lawn care or delivery person or, just there's a lot more percentage of those people than somebody that's a friend that comes over for dinner. So anyway, moving on. EconMap number 9, version 9. All right, let me get into this with you. All right, if you've been listening to me for any period of time for the last, now going on 3 years? I built this out at the beginning of 2020 when the pandemic first happened, and I made public an algorithm that I've been following for decades. And I've never shared this with the public until the pandemic happened because I felt like everybody really needed to understand that it didn't have to be stressful. You didn't have to have a future that was just unknown. And if you track back, because all those videos are available on YouTube, you can look back and say, holy mackerel, that algorithm was about 80-85% right on track. So I'm going to build out the algorithm with you and show you, but I'm also going to add some new relevant events that could change and create a version 9.1. So I'm going to go to a couple macroeconomic areas. Well, I don't know if you could classify these as macroeconomics, but they're on a wider scale. Let me put it this way. They're not on a personal finance, meaning I'm not looking at individuals, but I will, because a lot of what happens on an individual psychological basis with money will affect the larger macro decisions. Doesn't really work the other way around. All right, so stock market, right? So 2020, we built into the beginning of 2020 the big drop. And then we made a prediction that the stock market would keep going up. At the beginning of this year, I said, whoa, look at these numbers here and look at what's happening with the free money that's being given out, with the Great Recession, with the supply chain logjam, with all the other events that are happening, productivity at its lowest rate since World War II. This isn't going to look pretty. And I said, we're going to probably anticipate some pretty big drops. NASDAQ went down, 30%, Dow down 22, 23%. But I said, this is going to correct itself in a very, very short period of time. And we are on that correction right now. Now, what I did say is that a lot of this has to do with employment and productivity. And while this administration would like to blame the increase on gas prices on Putin, and then when it drops by 6 cents per gallon, take beneficial credit for that drop, it really is more to do with giving free money to people and taking away their incentive to fight for their lifestyle. And as long as these 11 or 12 states continue to give away state incentives, and now we have this proposed inflation, what are they calling it? Inflation relief bill, money. They can come up with any term they want. It's unbelievable. We're not going to see an increase in productivity. I still see inflation going up, not at the rate it went up for the first 6 months, and I don't see it getting under any control until a couple things happen. 1, stop giving away free money. 2, it has to be painful for the masses to stop spending, go back to work, put a full day's work in for what you get paid. You're getting paid for 8 hours, Put in 8 hours. Well, right now we're not seeing that. Even though unemployment is at 3.2 to 3.6, if you use the government figures, if you use the real figures, 7 to 7.5, it doesn't mean, just because somebody shows up to work, doesn't mean that they are productive. Have you been out to a restaurant lately? Have you been out to a retail store lately? How do you think that the service industry has been treating you lately? Or do they just not have the time to lift a finger to help you? That's what I'm talking about. There's not enough pain. When they can jump into a job at Chipotle making 50, 60 grand a year to wrap a burrito, sorry, they're not going to give you the time of day, because if you give them a hard time, they'll just jump and go to another place for 50, 60 grand a year. So that's what has to correct itself first before inflation is really going to get it under control. We're not there yet. We're not even close. You got to stop giving away the free money. Now, the real estate market does have an effect, especially when the interest rates went up. Now, the factor is right now, and this is pretty interesting, out of the top 30 highest growth real estate metro areas, there is an average of all the listings that have reduced their prices. So 24% of all the listings in the top 30 metro areas have reduced their prices to get the property sold. This is a function of interest rates going up, as well as not a fundamental decrease in the spending habits. Why? Retail is up. Travel is up. Savings and investing have cut themselves in half by 50%. If you look at the savings rate in the first 3 months of the pandemic, the average American was saving almost 11%. Right now, it's reduced a little bit better than 4%. That's a huge change. What does that tell you? People would rather spend now than save for later. So that's why I don't see real estate just dropping off the face of the earth, because there's still crazy people out there willing to pay the inflated prices at an increased mortgage rate. However, when we look at the numbers of real estate, the new sales are down, new builds are down. And now the increase in credit has gone up by 30% on the consumer credit side. And that means that people are borrowing more and they're spending their savings down. Now, if you had listened to me back in 2020, I said what I'm seeing here is an exact repeat of the 1919-1920 Spanish flu pandemic. And when you research that, people that were cooped up for a year or two, once they got out, they started spending money like crazy, and it lasted into the mid-1920s, otherwise known as the Roaring Twenties. It didn't really start to hit home until about 27, 28, when people ran out of money. And then what did they do? They started gambling, i.e. Bitcoin. Sound familiar? What was the NFTs? Quick money. They started gambling in these areas. And that was the stock market. But at that time, the stock market was extremely unregulated. A lot of fraud, a lot of fake stocks. And then when the market really came home to roost and it crashed, everybody lost everything. At that time, there was no FDIC insurance. There was no banking rules. And people just lost everything. Banks collapsed. Now, we have a little different system today. But the psychology has been exactly the same. Now, let me throw one wrinkle in here. I was anticipating originally that we would see the stock market going all the way until 2024, 2025. If you look at my blue line, I'm not anticipating that. I've made an adjustment to that in version 9 because when I see debt increasing, I see cash on hand per capita decreasing, I see the government continuing to give out free money, but at the same time they complain about inflation and increase interest rates, we're going to go through that savings a lot faster than they did in the 1920s. They didn't have a lot of these maneuvers back then, and I don't think increasing interest rates while still giving away free money is going to be good for anybody. It's going to keep your productivity low. So again, I'm trying to explain this because sometimes when I do my broadcast, I run out of time to really explain what this algorithm is showing us. Now, midterm elections could make or break a lot of what we see. Also, Manchin's recent approval, which may or may not change with Sonona, if I'm saying that correctly, our senator from Arizona. She's trying to make some of the changes. We don't know what that looks like yet. It hasn't gone through. But midterm elections could make a big change. And it could change from, these Democrats, that the senators that have this complete power, to more of a balanced, argue it out, negotiate it out kind of situation, which is better for all of us, honestly. So in this particular instance, midterm elections are going to have a big effect on taxes, our interest rates, inflation, employment. However, what everybody asks me is, when do you think it would be a good time to invest in real estate? I don't think it's there yet. We are, again, when we look at the time period it takes for the stock market to adjust, it could be a day, it could be an hour. When we talk about real estate, it's a 12 to 18 month gestation period. And we're just at the beginning of that. Now, if you want to know what I'm doing, I am now actively looking at listings. I'm actively tracking a lot of different areas and the types of real estate within that area. Because as I've said for the last year and a half, I was out. We didn't want anything to do with investment real estate, but I would anticipate sometime next year, mid to end of next year, I personally will be back into the real estate market in a big way. I love real estate. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I'm not going to be an idiot and buy it when it's 30, 40%, 100% higher and buy into this. I just walk away. Do not want to play in that pool. Okay, that's a lot of the emotion that people put into that. And, I have a friend of mine that was telling me that her friend bought a property because, it had doubled in value. And she said, but real estate will always go up. No, it won't. Let's remind ourselves that real estate took over 12, 11 years to recover from the Great Recession. And even at that point, there were some areas that had still not recovered. So it doesn't always go up. There's a lot at play. Your location, your density, your build rate, your raw land, your taxes. There's so many components that go into that. It doesn't always go up. So hopefully you'll understand that our circle of opportunity really falls towards mid to end of next year in the real estate market. All right, let's get on with the actions to take. Do not reduce stock. I've been telling you that since February. A lot of people got nervous, thought I was crazy, but please don't. The numbers, and again, war, interest rates, inflation, and lots of layoffs. That doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing for the stock market. Well, I think you're pretty close to losing the opportunity on this if you haven't done it already, but tax loss harvest before the market returns and you lose the opportunity. Compute your cash needs for the next 5 years. Make sure you have your buckets calibrated. It's like having your tires and your brakes calibrated. You got to have the right amount of cash and the right amount of buckets for the cash flow. Don't invest in real estate yet. Review your umbrella insurance. All right, that's it for today. Hopefully that gave you some good insight and information. Hey, listen, if you have anybody that is still in the accumulation phase, all they got to do is just Google Wiser Retire on YouTube, and they'll find this channel, which has a little bit different information than our H&H Financial Center, which is really designed for people in the distribution phase. And if you are not a subscriber here, all you got to do is just hit the little red button there up in the top right hand side like you see on your screen, and then you'll get notified when I have a new video out. And I guess what had happened was for about 2 weeks we were publishing our broadcast and it didn't get published for whatever reason. We still can't figure out why it didn't. But this way, when we do publish a new video, educational, informational, economic updates, you'll get notified. With that in mind, I hope you have a really good weekend. If you have any questions, give our office a call. It's 844-702-1040. Have a great weekend.